Welcome to Megapath Presents. I'm Ronnie Hayes, and today let's talk about The Walking Dead and fans being very angry at Daryl Dixon. Now, I don't think I need to say it, but I will anyway. Spoiler warning for Season 7, Episode 1. If you haven't seen it, watch it. AMC put a link. I shared it on Twitter. I'll try to put the link down below. You can watch it for free. It's on AMC's website. I believe like a 30-second commercial plays when you start it because I went ahead and started it to see if you needed to sign up. It's free. It just came right on for me. So go ahead and check that out. If you haven't seen it yet, if you want to rewatch it again, it's free. So check that out. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. Do you believe that it's Daryl Dixon's fault, directly, that, or indirectly, however you want to put it, that Glenn was killed by Negan? If you believe it's his fault, if you don't believe it's his fault, let us know before I begin speaking. Down in that comment box, put your thoughts and opinions. I figured before I would give my thoughts and opinions, who better to ask than the man himself? Let's bring Glenn out and let's ask him if he thinks it's Daryl's fault.
Fuck Daryl.
Okay, that was a bad idea. Let's just go to my opinions. I think it's definitely Daryl's fault. I mean, I've seen a couple articles that people are sharing, and it seems like some people are just going straight out of their way to overlook certain things. Now, I will come out in the open and admit it that I was wrong right now if the producers come out. Like, I don't care what any other fans say or your interpretation of the scene. If the producers, if the actors, if they come out and say, oh no, Negan was planning on killing, both of them from the gate, or more than one person from the gate. But with the way Negan was talking, he specifically said, that shit is not gonna fly, we're not gonna kill Daryl. And then he's like, I don't know what kind of assholes you guys have been dealing with, what kind of lying assholes. He's like, but I'm a man of my word. And then he's like, so, back to it, because the first one was, this is the lesson, Abraham. And then after Daryl got up like an asshole and then punched Negan in the face, which, listen, that was a vicious punch. If you're a Daryl fan, relax. I can already sense you going to that dislike button, but we'll explain his defense. But it was a vicious punch. It was a good one. Part of me, as a fan, though, no matter how awesome that punch was, and it sounded like a solid punch, I honestly kind of would have preferred if Daryl didn't punch him, but he got up and tried to. But it was more realistic to his wounds, to the fact that he's been sitting there for, let's say he got shot in the end of the day when it was still light out. He's been bleeding out in the back of a van all night, and it's almost daytime. He's been bleeding out all night. There's no pressure on that wound. He got a fucking gunshot in his shoulder. No, I would have preferred if Daryl, weak as shit, got up to punch him, and Negan just dropped him. Like, fucking dropped his ass right there. And I think that would have, no one would have hated Daryl for that. A weak Daryl got up, he went to hit him, he's bleeding out, keep that in mind, and then Negan either just drops him or sidesteps him, something, anything, but he doesn't land a punch. And that's why I said before, I kind of felt like it was, oh, here we go, we get this iconic villain coming to the screen, and then we get Daryl Dixon, who's becoming his own meme. Listen, Chuck Norris is the perfect example. Daryl Dixon is, if they don't do something, and I hope this is it, he is becoming Chuck Norris. There is something in entertainment where if you do it enough, it becomes a joke in itself. And I said this, you can't kill Michonne because Rick has Lori, she's dead. Jesse, she's dead. Michonne, it's becoming a joke. It's becoming its own meme. And you can't put that out of your mind when you're watching these shows. So when you see all these memes about how, there's a ton of them. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but there is some, real dumb ones. But it jokes about how badass he is, how invincible he is. Daryl Dixon is on the verge of becoming a Chuck Norris. He's becoming a joke. He's becoming a meme. Once it does that, it seeps into your experience when you're watching this. And yeah, it does become problematic. Now, if you're an all-time fangirl, you might not hear this and understand this and be like, well, that's stupid, you might write it off, but it's the truth. That happens. Not to every single fan out there, but to a portion of the fans. And I've been warning this fandom about this shit they're doing with Daryl for a while now. They need to do something with Daryl to curb that, and I'm hoping this is it, getting Glenn killed. Now, I do believe, if you want to go to the defense of Daryl, yeah, he doesn't know Negan. He doesn't know if Negan's taunting Rosita, if he's done, if he's going to kill Rosita. Maybe he did overstep his bounds. Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like in that moment, and I'll believe it if the producers come out and say it, but I feel like in that moment, they were good. Negan specifically said, I'm going to beat the holy hell out of one of yous. Once Rick said, I'm going to kill you, and this is after both deaths, but Rick most likely would have said some shit to piss Negan off. He still would have gave him that look that Negan didn't like. Negan most likely would have still taken him on this journey, brought him back, and in the end, Glenn would be alive still, you know? That's the way I see it. Now, there's a whole bunch of different things that could be going on, but just me personally. Now, I don't hold it against Daryl 100%, but there's a big part of me that believes, yes, Daryl is the reason Glenn is dead. He's absolutely the reason. As a fan, I kind of don't want them going down the storyline because we've been there, done that with the whole Beth shit. We've gotten quiet Daryl, you know, the quiet badass Daryl. It just feels like they said, oh, that worked so good. Let's just do it again, but even more now, even a greater death on his shoulders. Part of me feels that hopefully this could do something with his storyline to have the character actually redeem himself in the eyes of the fans who are pissed at him. I'm kind of hoping that the character, and it's weird to say it because basically, if I want to be blunt about it, Daryl would only redeem himself in my eyes if he got himself killed because of the guilt. If he put himself on the front lines. And I'm not saying he has to die. Hear me out. Let me finish before you go down there and threaten my life in the comments section. If he, from this point on, puts his life, you know what I mean, life, body, limb, whatever, on the front lines at all time in this battle against Negan, because of the guilt, if he does that, without a care for what happens at all to himself at 10 times more than he's ever shown in the past, that will lead to redemption for Daryl in my eyes, you know, as loving him. I mean, fuck. With that said, I don't feel like he has to die at the end of that. I still feel it would be haunting, heartbreaking, crushing, fitting if, because of this guilt, Daryl would eventually do something. Again, being pushed by this guilt, he will do something in All Out War that will help in one way or another turn the tides of the war a little bit, just enough for Rick and gang to get some kind of leverage on Negan. It doesn't have to be like the end of the war, but it could be in one battle, one major stronghold. It could be something. We don't know how big. We don't know what they're going to do. We don't know how they're going to play it, how they're going to remix it, how they're going to change it. But I'm still going for even more now that I'm seeing this and tie it back to that. You know what I mean? Like if you have Daryl who's so guilty about this, if you have Maggie and she is a presence now at the hilltop, and we have a Rise of Maggie Green, it's a video coming next, a video discussion. If you have Daryl so crushed, you can play that with something he does, and I don't know off the top of my head, but it needs to connect to Maggie as well. She can tell him, no, don't, and that would be an ultimate way of saying, like, I forgive you. I mean, like, the ultimate way, because it's tricky to tell. Maggie looked like she was scared for Daryl's safety, and I don't believe Maggie at this time would directly blame Daryl. It's tough right now, but I do, or I would believe it if they wrote it in there that she might not hate him, but there's a problem there. There's a friction there. There's now a wedge between the two. If they wrote that into the story, I would buy it a little bit, you know? That's a hard blow she took. Glenn was her world at this point. So, I personally believe that something really big and epic could come from this, not just taking Daryl to the sanctuary, and Glenn ended up being the third death because of Daryl's actions, in my opinion. That's what I think, and it's difficult trying to piece this together when you don't have all the information, how the story's going to play out, because a lot of what I'm talking about with his character and how it might come around full circle, that's not till season 8, you know, in my eyes. And we haven't even seen a sliver of season 7 yet. So I'm hesitant to get into certain details or certain specifics because we don't know it yet. We have an episode coming up where Negan is coming to collect his, first offering, he calls it. I like how he calls it an offering. He might, on a second or third visit, he might end up bringing. On the first visit, he could show up by himself, leave the whole group wondering, well, how's Daryl doing? And he's like, oh, it's fine. But they don't know if he's tortured him or if they healed him or if he killed him. They don't know what's going on. And then they can wait until the second visit to bring Daryl. Or they could just keep waiting and keep Daryl separated from the group and not tell them until finally maybe Rick is like, you know what, Negan, I want to see my guy, yada, yada, yada. I don't know, something like that. So that's also an interesting dynamic. And putting Daryl to work at the sanctuary alone to grieve is going to be, it's interesting story potential. I'm not saying it's going to be interesting. We haven't seen it yet. But it has the potential to be very interesting. That's all I got to say about this. Go ahead and leave your thoughts and opinions in that comment box. I'm done talking. It's your turn.
Subscribe now.
It's so fucking stupid. All right. I fucking can't do it.